All right, so this game essentially is a grouping game. It's a bit of a weird grouping game, but still a grouping game. We have essentially what's happening here is 5 people are going to have a bunch of flowers, and I guess we can set it up based on the people themselves, since we do know that every single person is going to have exactly 4 flowers, so we have that kind of certainty in terms of the spacing if we run by the people. So across the top, essentially we can run S, T, U, W, and Z, which are the people, and we know that we have 4 flowers, G, H, L, and R. Now we are told, as we said, that each person is going to have exactly 4 flowers, so we can set that up accordingly. And I mean, that means that essentially, we only have 4 flowers to work with, and each person is going to have exactly 4 flowers. So that's restrictive, but they do kind of clarify what's going to happen, which is that each person is going to have exactly 3 kinds of flowers, which means of the 4 spaces for each person, we're going to have 3 unique flowers, which means your 4th flower is always going to be a duplicate of some sort. And that's actually pretty powerful. That means that every single person is only going to be missing 1 flower. Everybody is going to get 3 of these 4, and everybody will have 1 duplicate of those 4. So let's take a look. S and nobody else uses 2 roses. So I guess we can say S will definitely have 2 roses. And we can plug that in, which for the record means that we know that these are going to be S's duplicates, right? Which means that these 2 flowers are going to have to be, for sure, unique. I guess we should further clarify that it's only S that will have exactly 2 roses, which means nobody else is going to be allowed to double up on the roses. Everybody else will at most have just 1 rose, and that's definitely good to know. Next, T uses exactly 1 H and at least 1 G. Okay, so I guess we can say T uses exactly 1 H, minimum of 1 G. Whether you want to write these in on the side or just plug them into the board directly, it's a bit of a personal call. Personally, I prefer to have the redundancy just in case I sometimes might forget to see something on the board. I still have the rules on the side. But again, there's definitely a bit of a personal variation there. So we can say that T is definitely going to have an H and a G, but we can also clarify that the H is going to be a single, while the G maybe could still double up. Next, U will have to have exactly 1 rose and at least 1 H, so you will have exactly 1 rose, exactly 1 rose, and we can say a minimum of 1 H, so same deal. Under the R, we'll have this kind of blocked off, which kind of makes sense. We don't really need to be told that it's exactly 1 as opposed to at least 1, because we definitely already know that we can't have 2 there. So if he has a rose, it's just going to be 1 rose no matter what. And there's definitely going to be at least 1 H there. And again, the H could duplicate, right? We could have a second H in there still. Next, we are told that will have 2 G's. So W definitely has 2 G's. Worth noting though, unlike S, he is not necessarily the only one that's going to double up on the G's, right? So we could have double G's elsewhere as well. Next, Z and nobody else uses exactly 1 H and exactly 1 rose. So that's pretty nicely restrictive. So I guess we can say, similarly, only Z is going to have exactly 1 H and R. So we can probably do a lot of damage with this, actually. So if Z is the only one, he is the only one that is allowed to have exactly 1 H and exactly 1 R, I mean, let's start with T. So T already has exactly 1 H, which means he's not really allowed to have exactly 1 R, because that would mean that they both have 1 H, 1 R, which means, well, actually, we can take this further. He's not allowed to have exactly 1 R, but he's also not allowed to have exactly 2 R's, because only S can have 2 R's, which means T can't really have R's at all. So T, if he can't have R's, he'll have to have everything else. He'll have to have an L, and I guess the 4th flower will just be a duplicate of the G or the L. So this, I guess we can just say, is going to be either G or L in that last little position. Next, what about U? We know that U has exactly one R already and it has at least one H. But wait a minute, he's not allowed to have one R and exactly one H, which means this can't be just one H. It has to be then two H's. We can say that H will be U's duplicate, which means his last slot will just have to be one of, I guess it could still be either G or L. So we can kind of plug that in. Now W, on the other hand, I guess what can we say about W? He has the double G's, so that's taken care of, but he can't have a single H and a single R, so these two slots can't be H and R respectively one way or the other, which means that essentially his last two slots are either going to be H with L or R with L. Those are the only combinations. Or in other words, actually we can say W will definitely have to have an L, and then his last position will be either an H or an R. So that's pretty good as well. And then in terms of the doubles for Z, I guess this could still be a double G or a double L. We don't really know. I guess let's keep going. Next, last rule tells us that exactly one person gets two lilies, so that's also nicely restrictive. We're only allowed, and we will have to have exactly one double L. So I guess the question now becomes, where could that double L go? And it certainly can't go here because Will's already got the doubles, he's got the doubles, he's got the doubles, which means your double L is going to have to go either into T or potentially into Z. Now, we're only going to have one double L though, so that means that one of them only is going to have a double L, and the other one, I guess the other one would have to have, well, a double G, because otherwise they've already taken care of this, right? This guy can't have any R's, it's an H, so the only alternative is a G, and this guy's got a single H, a single R, so the only alternative is two G's. So yeah, actually we can say that between T and Z, one of them is going to have a double L, and the other one is going to have a double G. So I guess what we could do is we could exhaust this based on that. I mean, that's probably not going to take us too far, but we only have two major plays here, and most of the game is already resolved, so it just might be visually helpful. So we can say either T is going to have the double L's, and then Z would end up with the double G's, or alternatively, T gets the two G's, everybody else remains the same, and then Z will end up with the double L's. So essentially, most of this game is resolved. I don't think we can do much more with S. I mean, he's got his doubles, but then his singles, there's not really much restriction. It's not like, the only restriction is I can't have a single H and a single R, but he's already got two R's, so that wouldn't be a possibility anyways. So he's just going to shuffle G, H, and L, and there's really not much restriction on him. So I guess let's see what we can do with what we have. The questions themselves. So the first question, number 13, asks what could be an accurate inventory of Ursula. So for U, well, we know that U is basically going to have a single R, a double H, and one of G or L. So we can kind of use that to run through the answers. So A and B are automatically out. She can't have double G's. In fact, we can probably use the fact that she will have two H's. So answer choice C, there's only one H that gets disqualified. Answer choice D has two H's, that's fine. E has two lilies, which is not going to work. So the best answer to question number 1 easily then becomes, or rather number 13, easily then becomes answer choice D. Next, question number 14. So 14 says, which of the following could be a pair of people whose arrangements are identical? So which two people could have the exact same set of flowers? Well, I guess let's see what we can do with this. Answer choice A, S and T. Well, S and T are definitely going to have different doubles. So either, right, in fact, S is the only one that has the RR double. So answer choice A is certainly out of the question. Answer choice B, could S and U have the same? Well, no, same thing. S is the only one that has double roses, so that's out of the question. C, could T and W have the same arrangement? Well, between T and W, I mean, we know that W is going to have two G's, but that's plausible with T because T could also have two G's. And in that scenario where T has two G's, they could both have L and H as their singles. So arguably, answer choice C would seem viable. Let's take a look at the other ones. Answer choice D, U and W. Well, they have different doubles for sure, right? W has the G's and U has the H's, so that's certainly not going to work. answer choice E, W and Z. Now, W and Z could potentially have the double G's, but their singles are different because W definitely has L and Z does not as a single anyways. So E wouldn't work. So the best answer to question number 14 then is answer choice C. Next, number 15. If lilies are used by exactly 2 of the people, and if, well, first of all, if we have exactly 2 lilies rather, if exactly 2 people are going to have lilies, I guess it's worth recognizing that the second scenario wouldn't actually work anymore because here we have 1, 2, and 3 people with lilies. So already, if we have exactly 2 people using lilies, that would have to be the top scenario that we're working with, and that would be T and W. Moreover, they kind of clarify, if of those 2 people, only one uses H's, well, we know that T would definitely be using H's, so he would be that person. So if only one uses H's, that means that W is going to end up with roses as his last slot over here. I guess the question is, those 2 people could be who? Well, actually, we already know who those 2 people are. It would be T and W. So the best answer to question number 15 then is C. Next, question number 16. Which of the following must be true? For the record, the reason we're doing these in order as opposed to doing the local questions first is we already have this kind of really well fleshed out. Everything kind of is already largely figured out. And in these situations, when you have the vast majority of the game already established, you may as well just go in order. So question number 16, which of the following must be true? Answer choice A, T contains no lilies. Well, no, in fact, we know that T definitely has lilies, so that's out of the question. Next, T contains no roses, and yes, as a matter of fact, that does have to be true. The best answer to question number 16 then is B. Lastly, question number 17. So this one's a modifier. In fact, this is one of the more old school modifier questions that LSAT hasn't really used in a really long time, where they actually change one of the rules entirely. So they're not asking you to replace the rule with a different rule that would have the same impact, but rather we're just changing the rule. Now, these kind of questions, they can be either very easy to work with or very difficult, depending on the complexity of the rule that you're changing. So let's take a look. The question asks, suppose that instead of the condition that Z only uses one H and exactly one R, only Z. So really, this condition right here is the one that we're apparently going to be replacing. So this is no longer applicable, which, whatever the rest of this says, this is going to be pretty painful, to be honest, because that rule over here did a lot of damage in terms of the deductions that we figured out, right? We kind of ran a whole bunch of deductions based on this rule alone. So we're going to have to probably kind of reset a lot of the game. So I guess let's see what we can do. The rest of it says, we're replacing it with a condition that Z plus one other person uses exactly one H and exactly one R. So instead, and at least one other. So I guess we can say Z plus one person will have exactly one H and exactly one R. So yeah, that is going to change quite a bit, isn't it? Because a lot of the other rules were based on the idea that only Z was allowed to have exactly one H and exactly one R. So you know what, for this scenario, let's reset. Let's kind of start from scratch. So the first rule told us that only S gets double roses. So S gets two R's and nobody else does. Next, T is going to get exactly one H and at least one G. So as usual, one H and at least one G, and there's another two spaces there. U is going to get exactly one R and at least one H. So we can box that off. And there's going to be the two spaces there. W is going to pick up the double G and a couple of people. Now Z is going to have exactly one H and exactly one R as before. So this is going to have to be, again, a duplicate over here. And there's going to be only allowed one double L block. So the thing is, first of all, let's go back to Z having one H and one R. So the question now is, who else could have exactly one H and R? Now, we actually have quite a bit of variation here because W could still have an H and an R over here, exactly one of each. U arguably yeah, I mean, this could be a single H and this could be a double G, for example. For T, we could have a single R here as well, and then we can have double G's or double L's. So, and then even S could also have exactly one, well, no, because S has two R's, so that's out of the question. But a lot of the other elements or the other positions actually could have exactly one H and exactly one R. Now, in terms of variation, it looks like the only rules that kind of remain in play now, because these other rules that we worked with are just locked in place. They're not doing much. So really, we just have to worry about this last rule, that we have to still accommodate one more HR block, and we still have to have exactly one LL block. And the LL block, again, it could have actually a lot more flexibility now, because since U could be a single R and an H, you could place the LL block here, or here, or here. That said, though, we're only going to be allowed one LL block, though, so that's kind of something to keep in mind. Let's take a look. The question is, which of the following must be true? So we're looking for what is definitely going to be certain right now. Okay, well, let's see. Answer choice A, T contains exactly one R. So I guess the question is, do we have to have, I guess, does T have to be your other HR individual? Well, no, because couldn't we, I mean, we said, couldn't this guy instead have exactly one H and exactly one R? In which case, does T really have to have just one R? Couldn't T, I mean, T definitely couldn't have two R's, but does T have to have R's at all? And no, couldn't you instead have placed, let's say, G over here and an L, so you could have had a double G and a single L, and that seems very safe. As long as we maintain that LL block elsewhere, we're still good, so I don't see why answer choice A would have to be true. Next, answer choice B, exactly one arrangement contains no roses. So do we have to have exactly one arrangement with no roses? Now, we already have 3 arrangements with roses, so I guess the question is, does it have to be true that exactly one of T and W will be without roses? And I mean, no, couldn't they both have roses, arguably? So couldn't you place a rose over here and a rose over there? So this guy could have your HR block, so that's easy enough. And as long as this guy gets the LL, because we need to satisfy this rule over here, then this guy could easily pick up, let's say, a double G as well as an R. So there doesn't seem to be any reason that somebody does not have a rose. Moreover, couldn't they both lack roses as well? And actually, yeah, couldn't you do something like a GG block over here, and then this could be an L, and this could be an L and an H, in which case neither have roses. So it certainly doesn't have to be that exactly one does not have roses. We can have 2 without roses, or we can have all of them with roses. So either way, answer choice B is out. C, exactly 2 arrangements each contain 1 rose and 1 H. So do we have to have exactly, I mean, we definitely know that there's at least one more, and it's worth noting, double check the rule, but the original rule that we're told in that question is that we're going to have at least one more person with a single H and a single R, which means, does it have to be true that there's exactly 2 that has 1 R and 1 H? Now, I guess the question becomes, could we have 3 of them that have a single H and a single R? And seemingly, yes, couldn't we? For example, W could be another person with a single H and a single R, and then this guy could have a single H and a single R. In fact, even this guy as well could have a single H and a single R, as long as you have an LL block in one of those groups, because we still need to maintain that. The rest of them could be GG blocks. I don't see why this has to be true either. So answer choice C is out. Answer choice D, at least one arrangement contains no H's. Do we have to have an arrangement with no H's? So I guess the question becomes, could we have all of them with H's? And actually, why not? I mean, we have H's in these 3 already. We could arguably, let's say, put H and L in here, or even H and R, because we still need to have one more HR block. And this guy could easily have, let's say, an H and an L or a G. And I mean, yeah, why couldn't everybody have an H? That doesn't seem like there would be anything broken with that. Answer choice E, at least one arrangement contains no lilies. So I guess, does that have to be true? Do we have to, oh boy, do we have to have no lilies somewhere? Well, we definitely know we're going to have at least one more, well, not at least, exactly one LL block. So I guess the question is, could we have lilies everywhere? Now, if we have lilies everywhere, then everywhere else we're going to have exactly one L, right? Because we're not allowed to have more than one double L. But if we place, for example, let's say we place the LL block over here, then I guess the only other restriction is that we have to have exactly one HR somewhere else. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so that's going to be a problem. So, okay, so this is really subtle, but the thing is, let's kind of do this off board for a moment. We have to have one more flower set, one more group that has exactly one H and exactly one R, which means there's going to be two people that have a single H and a single R. Now, those two people are still going to have two more flowers, and those are going to be duplicates, right? Because we have to have doubles for everybody, and the H's and R's can't be a double for those people. Now, those doubles, who could they be, really? They could be an LL block, or they could be a GG block, except we're only allowed to have one LL block. So if we're only allowed to have one, best case scenario, one of these is going to have your LL block, but then the other one can't also have an LL block, and it can't be a single, so it's going to have to be a GG block, which means one of your people is definitely going to lack lilies, because there's going to be at least one person that's going to end up with a single H, a single R, and they'll have to have a GG block because the other single H, single R will be the one with the LL block. So it does seem like for question number 17, answer choice E must be true.